Rich has been working hand in hand with the Corps of Engineers Galveston District on the HSC, which we call HSC Houston Ship Channel Project Improvement, and they call Project 11, 10, 12, all the way up to 20 eventually. Rich has a few degrees from some school up north, MIT, something like that, and from the West Coast as well. Although he didn't graduate from A&M, he does teach there occasionally. So without further ado, let's have Rich Byrnes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just pressed the down button. Okay, great. So I want to thank the Army Corps of Engineers and Congresswoman Fletcher as well. I'm not sure if she's still listening, but for the support and the partnership. I heard some comments this morning about partnership and that the people are important. And no place is that more valid than working here with the Army Corps. Picture I'm showing here is just the signing of the project partnership agreement last summer between our executive director, Roger Gunther, and Colonel Vail. And I put the mission and vision and values and priorities of our organization and the Corps side by side because there's really a lot of commonalities. Two words that really come out are people and partnership. But readiness, infrastructure, these things all tie together. So I'm here to talk about the Sustainability Action Plan, but do want to talk a little bit about why we have one. You're familiar with the phrase ESG, environmental, social, and governance. That is a increasingly important topic. Last year, our board charged us with framing up what we do around ESG. You can see the little superscript 2 because we add a second S to our ES squared G. The second one is about safety because it's so important in our industry. Just a little bit about the context of the port and the greater port in Houston. It is the largest port area in the country by total tonnage. Port Houston is the operating port of the public docks, the container terminals, and the largest steel import and project cargo port in the country. We have about 6,000 trucks a day that come to our container terminals, every one with a diesel engine. So I'll come back to that. And then we have 200 private facilities and in combination of their facilities and nearly 800 million barrels of storage for various products and 1,200 pipelines. We're a very big petrochemical and import center for not only the Houston region, but the country. 10,000 vessels, 200,000 barges makes us the busiest waterway in the country. So a little bit about why. We are going to talk about an action plan, the Sustainability Action Plan, but plans come from strategies and those are driven by our values and our mission. And our core mission at the port is to drive regional prosperity. And as our chairman says, prosperity starts with jobs, but it doesn't end there. I liked the comment that Congresswoman Fletcher talked about. You know, we're the energy capital of the world, but we care about the environment too, right? We are continually approached by our communities and our environmental advocates to say, what are you doing about the communities who live in the shadow of the ship channel? And so as we go from our core values to our long-range plan, which is based around the channel, and I'd love to talk about that, but that's not the topic today, and cargo and community, and then change really moving into the future. That drives into some action plans. The Project 11 is the cargo action plan. Our capital program and our infrastructure is the cargo action plan. And then from a community standpoint, ES squared G. And then from a change standpoint, it's all about sustainability and encouraging and accelerating new technologies that are going to be part of this energy transition that Jeff just talked about quite a bit. So why sustainability? You don't have to throw a stone too far to hear a concern about what's happening around the port and the ship channel area. And this is a busy slide, but basically we hear everything. whether it's directed at the public port docks or it's directed at private industry, we hear things like, you have to emissions and we have to create jobs. And what about diversity, equity, and inclusion and sustainability? So that's the context. We like to respond to our stakeholders. And so we did with an ESG report, and I won't read the text. Basically, the message is it's important. We also recognize we can't do it alone. It takes an entire community. And when I say community, I'm talking about the people who live in the shadow of the ship channel, but I'm also talking about the private industry with the literally trillions of dollars of invested capital and the economic output that I talked about earlier. And that ESG report is available at porthouston.com/ESG if you'd like to read it. And it's got everything that we're doing, plus what the action plan is that we're going to go do forward. It's nearly 100 initiatives, 70 plus of things that we're already doing. I'll give you a smattering of that. And then 27 new opportunities to engage with stakeholders around sustainability concepts. Just an example of some of the things that we're already doing. The port, we didn't just think about sustainability last year. In 2002, we were the first port to become ISO certified for environmental management. We have reduced our carbon footprint 55% since 2016 by doing some pretty clever things like moving to 100% asset-backed, meaning we helped with our provider Shell to build a solar panel to provide us the electricity. We've created 3,300 acres of marshlands and more to come with Project 11. And we have reduced the emissions in the port area. When I say we, it's community. It's the vessel owners, it's the truck manufacturers, it's the truck owners and so forth. But those have all come down between 15 and 93% since 2013. And then the ES2G also talks about safety and governance and social. We are champions of maritime education. We are champions of communities improvement projects, the community grants program. We are the fire response system and the police force for the port area. And in terms of governance, we have transparency in terms of financial transparency and other. And we're proud to say we've won this award for financial transparency 44 now years in a row. The conference is about environmental and social justice, and that is about people and partnerships. So just a couple of slides to talk about how we outreach to the public. We have webinars every month. We have workshops, and I'll talk a little bit about sustainability workshops in a second. One of the callers in is a member of our Port Commission Citizens Advisory Council, the PCCAC. And we're starting some new things around community grants and alliances with the city of Houston and the East Harris County communities around parks programs and so forth. So last summer we said, well, what more can we do? So we got together and we ran a series of workshops. We asked some pretty important people, including Colonel Vail at the bottom of this slide, Judge Emmett, and a few others, to be advisors to us and say, really, what can the port do? What's important? And we gathered 80 stakeholders for a series of meetings to just ask that question, what's important to them? And those stakeholders were 30% citizens, 60% industry, 10% subject matter experts like universities and so forth. And you can see in the word cloud what they said was important: emissions reduction, decarbonization, but there's also environmental justice, social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we brought all these things together and we said, what are the priority areas? And so on the right side of this slide, through a voting system and interactive, it was really a lot of fun to do these WebExes. with 80 people on board. We had the breakout meetings and so forth, if you've ever been able to participate in that. And we said, or they said, clean energy, air quality, circular economy, community strengthening, and transparency were the priorities. And then we asked, well, when do you want it, and where do you want it? Do you want us to solve global climate change and greenhouse gases, or do you want us to solve problems closer to home? And the answer came back fairly strongly that it was closer to home before global, but global is important. And we want it now, but we realize things take time. The question about a hydrogen hub, that's not going to happen in 2 years. That's going to happen over decades with lots of infrastructure investments and so forth. Collaboration and partnership was a huge theme. And again, that didn't come from us. That came from the communities and the industry. Everybody knows they have to work together. Just imagine if we want to transform that fleet of 6,000 trucks from diesel to methanol or hydrogen or batteries. The truck owners can buy trucks, but if they don't have the supply and the fueling stations, it's not going to happen. The hydrogen producers can say it's available, but if the trucks don't convert to new technologies, there's not going to be a demand function. So we need to connect the supply with the demand function in order to make the overall solution and energy transition and sustainability initiatives prosper. So given all this, we created an engagement model, and it's really about what can we do ourselves inside of our fence line, leading it? What can we partner? Do we have to partner because we don't have all the answers and all the capital and all the access and all the rights of way and so forth? And then what should we be supporting because they're very vitally important, but they're not the core business of the port? So just a couple of examples. Inside of our fence, we can electrify our equipment. We can focus on freight mobility, which is really, if you can debottleneck a road and rail network, there's less idling. That's good for business and it's good for the environment. In terms of partnerships, it's about creating alternatives for the drayage trucks. It's about reducing emissions at the dockside. And that can be done a couple of different ways, from a waterside scrubber barge or from shore power installations and so forth. From a supporting standpoint, we are founding members of the Blue Sky Maritime Coalition, which is focused on decarbonization and shipping. And right now we're looking at helping to define and accelerate the implementation of green corridors, green shipping corridors, and so forth. We are also founding members of the International Energy Agency's Hydrogen Ports Coalition, which is really focused on sharing best practices. And that's important because we don't have all the answers. We talked to Port Antwerp. I learned something just now from Corpus Christi. We talk to other ports all the time. We talk to other port users and try to get those types of ideas. So those examples have been on the environmental side. On the social side, it's about community grants. We can do those. We are doing those. We're going to continue to do those. From a partnering standpoint, there's one here called Harbor Street, which is actually donating some of our land to the city of Houston to create a resiliency center and a lily pad for storm resiliency when things like Harvey happen. People need a place to go. And we have an ideal piece of property that's really not geared for cargo anymore. So we're working with the city of Houston to transfer that land and create a partnership. And it's going to be a great destination when we get that one together. So that's how it can work. I did want to mention that I'd be remiss to come into this building and not talk about Project 11. And thank you very much for the funding, Congressman Fletcher. But, we're creating bird islands. We're working with the Army Corps of Engineers, of course, on oyster mitigation, marsh islands. These are beneficial uses of the dredge material. And then from an air quality standpoint, from a design basis standpoint, because it'll be a much more efficient and a safer channel, 3 to 7% reduction in emissions was part of the design basis. We've gone beyond that, and negotiated with the dredge companies who are working on the first segment to lower emissions beyond the requirements. And I think we're 38% better than Tier 3 when Tier 1 was the requirement. So we want to carry that legacy and that ambition forward. So what's ahead? Every company in the world has declared they're going to get to net zero by 2030, 2040, or 2050. Very few are going to articulate exactly how it happens. If there's even one car driving on gasoline, how do you mitigate that with a carbon negative? Carbon capture, great idea. Hydrogen, net neutral or net negative methanol production. These are some of the things that we're talking about with partners. But first things first, and an action plan says, what are you going to do this year? So in 2022, we're going to continue our program for smart lighting, which has reduced the electricity consumption and therefore the emissions footprint, and some other things that you can see on the slide. A little more about that decarbonization focus, just to go back to the big picture. The Blue Sky Maritime Coalition started with a number of founding members that you can see on the slide. The membership has doubled in the last 6 months, and we are focused on 4 working groups around, you can read them on the slide, efficiency, equipment, policy, financing capabilities. How are we going to get to a net zero in shipping when we've got vessels that have a 30-year economic life, tugs that have a 20 or 30-year economic life, and the alternative fuels and the bunkering systems aren't here yet. So how can we accelerate that? How can we collaborate around those ambitions? And right now, as I said, the focus is on helping to define what a green shipping corridor is. Is that port to port? Does that include the port? Does that include the hinterland? If you're Walmart, you want a shipping corridor all the way to your origin and destination. If you're a product tanker, you want to be part of that end-to-end solution between ports. So we're working on that, and we invite others to ask questions about what the Blue Sky Maritime Coalition is achieving. And then I'm going to just close with a passing or a parting thought. For the last 3 years, the Port of Houston has been a founding sponsor of the Port of the Future Conference. In 2020, we were the last one to do it in person before COVID hit. Last year, we did it virtually. I think we doubled or tripled the outreach to multiple continents, in fact. And so the next one is coming up in April. And the topics that we're going to be discussing there are about sustainability, resilience, how do we get to the future? So there are panels on alternative fuels, including methanol and ammonia, LNG, electric vessels. There are panels around carriers' views. Maersk, which is one of the biggest users of the Port of Houston, has ordered now 12 alternative, and in fact 13 with a small feeder ship, alternative fuel vessels, many of which can do dual fuel as well. So these are the types of topics, and we invite you to investigate that Port of the Future Conference. You can Google it or email me, and I can let you know. And I'll leave a couple minutes for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate you, sir. Oh, do you have a question?
I thought I was lucky. Go for it.
Are Asian ports also
Involved
working with you?
in that Blue Sky Maritime Coalition? Yeah, so there's 2 ports as part of this coalition. The membership is really fantastic. It's big carriers, it's international banks and so forth. The other port is Vancouver. So they are, of course, focused on the Asian trades. Houston is, Antwerp actually is part of it as well. So, and then the International Energy Agency's Hydrogen Ports Coalition is every continent. So including Asia, including Brazil, including Europe, and then we're the members from the US. Well, I appreciate everybody listening and listening to our message. It's about collaboration, about partnership. We can't do it alone. We get questions from the environmental community and the advocates of the people who live in the shadow of the ship channel every day. We are allies and we work together. I think we've proven that with the Army Corps of Engineers, and we'd like to do that with the other stakeholders as well. Thank you.